on, guys.
You're gonna have to work.
Is this okay?
That's enough. That's enough. Here's your
You have
cable.
a pregnant woman helping. Thanks a lot, guys.
She did good.
Okay, so here's a question. We just moved a great big spool of wire in.
Yeah.
All this wiring, what does it have to do with our show today?
Well, of course, our show is going to be about homes, but what we're talking about today is wiring and power and how all this stuff is such an important part of our homes today. If we were to go back 150 years, we had no electricity and our world was completely different.
No, really, the electricity has changed our lives. Think about our computers, all the power tools. It really has. So what do you guys have over here?
Well, first, even our truck, Gertie, 1951, the Chevy truck has wiring.
Good point.
Now, guys, here in Fort Wayne, this is an interesting stat. Marmaduke Slattery decided to hook a battery up to his tricycle. So that was in 1880. So long before all of this battery-powered stuff came along, there was somebody here in Fort Wayne that had a bright idea.
That's pretty interesting.
Wow, and even today, look, everything that my kids have, we have to plug in.
No, they-
Scooters, hoverboards, they can't do anything on their own.
No,
My kids can't use them half the time.
Everything has a cord.
Right.
Oh,
now,
everything.
Izzy, I know you'll recognize one of these
Oh, yeah.
batteries. Long before that Porsche or Tesla's, there was your Power Wheels. So
Yeah.
every child, I think, has a fond memory of these.
And you have the power tools. Everyone thinks battery operated. Well, you gotta charge it somehow.
Yeah.
Hey, Tony, take a look at this Porsche.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, happy to
This
do
thing's
that.
got no engine. No engine.
Money.
Unless this is the engine. That's kind of weird.
The suitcase is the engine
What do you mean? What do you
because you have to plug the car in.
mean? Oh, wow. Now, I have heard that if you have a fire in a car that's considered a battery car,
Yes.
that you could have a big problem.
guys, Mike.
Just got off the fire truck here, all right? So I've been a volunteer firefighter for about 8 or 9 years, and over the years, the training that we've had to go through has changed, especially concerning electric cars. So there's elements in the electric batteries, that lithium, that is super reactive to water. So you can't put it out with traditional means of firefighting. So we have to put in a special foam that will actually suffocate that fire rather than putting it out with water.
That's really interesting. Okay, Tony, what kind of Porsche? Forget him. What kind of Porsche is this?
What is it?
Oh, this is one of those beautiful electric Porsches.
Oh.
Porsche, not Porsche.
Yeah.
Taycan Turbo. This is going to have about 100 kilowatts for a fully charged battery.
Okay.
And if you're wondering, that averages out to about $12 for a full tank and gets you about 250 miles.
Well, that's a lot better than our gas right now. I think I just paid about $100 to fill my car.
And I think Gertie gets about 4 miles to the gallon.
So it's 4
all right,
gallons
guys,
to the
we gotta
mile.
open up. This is all about electricity, energy. You are not going to want to miss this. All right, guys,
You are not allowed in there
I
yet.
might be able to. I don't know.
Go change. Go
I want to
change.
ride. All right.
I actually
charge
don't.
these things?
I think my son tried to ramp it and it broke.
Welcome to Between the Studs. We are Granite Ridge Builders, custom builders serving northern Indiana, northwest Ohio, and also parts of southern Michigan. We have been building custom homes for almost 2 decades, and we're really passionate about what we do. So join us today as we explore the processes, the trends, and also tips that characterize today's new home. Thanks for watching.
welcome back. Today's show is all about homes, energy, electricity especially, but why don't we describe that here in a second. We've got some stats, but before we do that, let's describe home living or a house and what it had back maybe even 150 years ago. Again, transportation. We've talked about the Porsche. We've also talked about a 1951 truck. Before that, there was no transportation except for horses, all those kind of things. Life is so different. We are so blessed to have a world that we live in, and sometimes I think it's underappreciated.
Yes.
So let's describe houses and what they were like.
Well, I can personally go back to the 1950s, 1960s, and it's true that even in the early 60s, there were a number of homes that had no power, no electricity in them. I remember my grandma's house, for example. It might have had 6 or 8 plugs and switches in it, and the homes were simple. We're talking about like a bungalow-style home, or in the country, a country farmhouse style, but very simple, very basic, and in some cases, no power.
No, and a lot of them had 2 bedrooms. And I remember this.
Yes.
They didn't even have closets in most of them. They were just cabinets.
We went to the bathroom outside.
We don't not talk about that.
I won't talk about it.
Now, when we talk about involvement, we've got to talk about entertainment. So, in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, people watched the radio, right? They literally sat around the radio as a family and they listened to it. And then by 1955, half of the houses had a black and white TV. And then TVs continue to evolve, and now we've got, building whole entertainment rooms that have 5+ TVs in them by themselves, plus all the sound and audio. But now video games, VR, virtual reality is changing things. We're building houses that have rooms that are just virtual reality rooms. So there's so much that has evolved where really it became kind of an afterthought with entertainment. Oh, we'll just plug a radio in. Now we have whole trade partners that their whole responsibility and their target is to make sure the entertainment is absolutely perfect in these homes.
Well, Lonnie and I remember when color came on TV, we thought that was amazing. And guess what? I was the TV changer for my parents for a long time.
Hey, go change the channel.
Yeah.
And when I walk into a room now, I can just say, Alexa, it's dark in here, and turn on the light. Or I can flip a switch and turn on the lights in a whole house. You couldn't do that 150 years ago. In fact, there was no automatic light. It was fumbling around, getting a match, striking it to actually get something lit and light a house. And as you move through with kerosene lamps and different things like this, still maybe one light per room is very dim. And so the way we do things now is just absolutely different.
Well, imagine your kitchen with no plugs and electricity. That's no microwave, no dishwasher, no refrigerator, no range, and then the coffee pot. How do you make coffee? And then the toaster and crock pot. I don't even know how they ate.
I don't think Elizabeth would have survived.
Well, think about phones and communication. I mean, it started with just letters, and then there was just maybe one phone per town, and then one phone per home, and they've changed so much. I mean, now my kids can call me through Alexa, and they don't even have a phone, and I can communicate with them. So times have really changed, and we don't know what to do without these anymore, and it's all because of electricity.
Lonnie, do you remember doing the dial?
I sure
The rotary
do.
phone? That was hard.
Phones.
I got so nervous, I started making it go the other way as fast as I could.
That was your exercise for the day.
was.
Now let's talk about the creature comforts a little bit that we have nowadays. You know, Tony tells us all the time that we're sissies, and it's true. We can't live without air conditioning. We can't live without heat. You know, we can't live without all of these luxuries that we have. And until the 50s and 60s, we never had that AC. Whatever breeze coming through your windows is your AC. And then up until that time too, you know, it was fireplaces. They didn't have central heat in their house.
Okay, those are fun. Now, let's do this. Let's talk a little bit about some fun stats and facts about electricity in our homes. I've got one. Did you know that the average home has about 70 light bulbs in it that we do for a new home? Plus, we have almost 200 to 250 switches and plugs.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Wow. And that explains why we figured out there's 2,000 to 2,500 feet of wire in a home, wire and cable in a home, which is actually farther than I can walk. Without a cane.
And one of our typical homes, to put all that wiring in, it costs us about $10,000 a house just to wire a brand new home.
Yeah.
If you're going to remodel, it takes about $20,000 to remodel a home today with wiring.
Now when it comes to the light bulbs, incandescent and halogen light bulbs are extremely inefficient. Only 10% of the energy they use goes into creating light.
Wow.
And that's why the federal government said we need to phase these out. So it's getting harder and harder to buy the incandescents. CFLs are about 80% more efficient than the incandescents, and they'll last about 12 times more. But really, LEDs are the way to go. They're more efficient than any light bulb out there. They'll last 20 plus years, and really at this point in homes, LEDs really the only way.
And Kayla, how many can lights do you put in per home now?
Oh, we probably have 30, 40. It just depends. There can be a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, in other words, I'm going to say we put about 100 light bulbs and can lights now in a particular new home.
Well, if you break down the energy bill for an average home, 20% of it is going to be spent on that lighting. So that's why, again, these LEDs are so important. But 50% of the average light or electricity bill is going to be spent on heating and cooling. But probably the strangest fact that I found out is, again, we all know that electricity can be made from water, wind, and the sun, but it can also be made from animal droppings.
Oh, let's not go there.
Yeah.
Well, electricity travels at the speed of light, which is about 186,000 miles per second. So pretty fast. And now in the US, we are doubling our energy usage every 20 years.
Crazy. Now, I talked about phones earlier, and just using a sleep function on any of your devices could save you $70 per year in your cost of electricity.
Wow.
Now, Elizabeth, you said electricity travels at the speed of light. Now, to put that in perspective, if there was a light bulb on the moon and it was connected to a light switch in your bedroom, and you flip the light switch in your bedroom, it would only take 1.26 seconds for that power to run from that light switch to the light bulb on the moon.
I want to know who thought about even testing that theory.
Figured that out.
I came up with that in my spare time.
Now, Izzy was talking a little bit about the kilowatt usage on the houses, and you're looking at about 11,000 kilowatts being used in your average American house per year, which comes at about $1,650 for just the electricity use in the home. Except when you're working with Granite Ridge Builders, you're going to be doing about 40% less energy usage in there, because we do have the 96% energy efficient 2-stage furnaces. We have the SEER 14 air conditioners. Tony, we have the on-demand water heaters now. Standard. So as the water's going through, then it's getting heated up. So this is just going to save you more money, and it's going to be better for our world because we're using less electricity with our homes.
Okay, those were some fun stats. Stay tuned. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the history. How did we get electricity? And let's do some of the trends. How's that? All right, let's go ahead and get to our slices.
Yeah.
We are so excited to be talking today about electricity and energy in your homes today, everything that's being powered with it, how it's getting to your homes. But before we do that, we need to go back to the past, and we need to see how it all started. And it was really the Egyptians back 2,000 years ago who first saw electricity in the electric eels, and they could see how electricity and lightning and thunder would be conveyed through these animals. And then really nothing exciting happened until about 1700s, when an old man by the name of Benjamin Franklin started playing with that key and the kite with the wet string.
So about 100 years later, after the Ben Franklin story, we got into this Edison-Tesla controversy that everybody hears about. So most people don't know that Tesla was actually an Edison student. He was offered $50,000 by Edison to come up with a better power system to electrify the city. So Edison had direct current system, and Tesla came up with alternating current. So alternating current was able to send power farther away from the power stations, and it wouldn't cause power loss. Edison thought that was a terrible idea. So he kept that $50,000 and basically told him he was an idiot and he's got to get out of here, kind of thing. So there was a huge controversy there. Once Tesla left, a guy by the name of Westinghouse, which is a still popular name today, he bought all of Tesla's patents, and then he turned his power systems into that AC power.
So you're talking about the Westinghouse that was big into the appliances back in that time.
Yep, and they still manufacture light bulbs today. So there's that huge controversy. It came to a peak in 1893 at the World Fair in Chicago. So what happened was they put out a bid for who's going to power our World Fair here in Chicago, and they went with Westinghouse in the AC unit, the AC system there.
The Tesla system.
Yep, the Tesla system. So from that point on, Edison decided he's going to start playing dirty. He's going to run a smear campaign. He's going to go around the country, and he was actually electrocuting live animals in front of crowds to try to discredit this alternating current system.
And it's really fascinating when you're looking at it, the AC to the DC, the AC to the DC. Oh wait, I think I'm talking about a band right now. And also Tesla. And because the biggest thing is Edison gets all the credit because he was the one who lit the first light bulb. But Tesla is really the one who really came up with the way to light up the world. So as Nikola Tesla was lighting up the world, this really had a major effect right here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. People don't understand how much Fort Wayne was on the forefront when it came to lighting the world, and some of the things that we're using today that were all originated here in the Summit City.
Yeah, Fort Wayne was a huge hub for electronics, wires. The biggest thing was it's called the magnet wire. And what it was is it was a copper or aluminum wire that they actually coated with plastic so that way they couldn't arc inside of a sleeve. That was the turning point for Fort Wayne. So that brought in all of these businesses. We had Dudlow, Ray Magnet Wire, Phelps Dodge, Superior Essex, General Electric. So it really was a turning point for Fort Wayne, and it made Fort Wayne a hub.
It made a lot of the inventors want to come here because this is where the magnet wire was at. This is where the television was invented. This is where a lot of the appliances were invented, and it was all because we had the right situation and the right setup for the magnet wire industry. And it's those past history stories that we have which keep moving us to the future as an industry leader here in Indiana.
So Luke, let's talk about power, kind of where it starts and how it ultimately gets to the houses that we build.
Yeah, so obviously we start at the source, which is the plant. Now, a power plant can take on very different looks and forms depending on what we're using to generate that power.
And by the way, Luke, I looked it up, and in Indiana, we've got 10, 12, maybe 14 power plants. Most of them are south because 87% of what those power plants use to generate the electricity is either coal or gas.
Right. Now, out our back door, we have some windmills. Those are generating power for whom?
Well, I know, Luke, that General Motors, for example, uses those windmills, and at one point in time, a couple of years ago, they estimated that up to 80% of their power could be obtained from the windmill.
Right. So we've got the power plants with coal or wind or any other source that it might come from, and then it's going to then run overhead, typically, wires. So those wires you see as you're driving down the roads.
Transmission lines, we call them?
Transmission lines, and they've got the big poles. Now, down at Disney, they have some really interesting looking poles. They've gotten creative and works of art with those.
Pluto,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But they run across those lines at a very high power level. Okay. So extremely dangerous to the end consumer.
Don't touch those lines.
Right. Okay. But it'll go through a transformer out of the power plant that then boosts it up to that level. So that way that power can go down miles and miles and miles to get to the next substation.
And it's a substation, and then from the substation goes back onto lines again.
Right.
Above ground typically?
Yep, above ground typically.
And then to our subdivisions and to the country where people can find the power.
Right. So then when that power gets to those subdivisions, it goes into another transformer. Those
green boxes.
Green boxes down on the ground, or they can still be overhead up on the power poles. And that transformer steps the power down to a safe level for our houses. So once it goes through those, and they can be the bigger boxes of transformers, they also have smaller ones. And those typically in the subdivisions you see, maybe are supporting 4 to 7 houses.
And then once we have the transformer set, then we typically are going to set a temporary pole or service, and we're off that temporary, we're going to build the house to provide the power for the house eventually.
Yeah, then eventually they come out, they'll disconnect it from the temporary and hook it up to the house. And that's where your meter is. It's got that glass globe. Typically on the other side of that meter is going to be where your electric panel is. So they've got a bunch of circuit breakers in there, and that's going to take that power that's from the transformer and then split it up into different circuits throughout your house. It's going to send it to the garage, send it to the bathroom, wherever it may need it, to your lights. And that's basically how it goes from the power plant all the way to your plug when you're plugging in, your vacuum cleaner.
And so the home is energized, it's ready to be lived in, and typically in this day and age, you're going to spend anywhere from $80 to $90 a month to maybe $120 to $150 a month for your electric service.
Izzy, you just got done going over and talking about some of the high voltage and the lighting that we're doing in the homes. High voltage is something that I'm not allowed to play with according to my wife. However, we can talk about more of the low voltage wiring, correct?
Yeah, if we're doing the low voltage wiring, we're looking at things like maybe pendant lights or under cabinet lightings. But Tony, another really important thing right now, we know how much internet access is very important to our clients. And another part of that is going to be the Wi-Fi access. Now, a lot of people are going Wi-Fi and everything, but we're still telling you that you do need to have certain things plugged in. So we're going to plan for those kind of outlets too with your Cat 5e wiring. We're going to do those kind of things so that your Wi-Fi doesn't lag. We might even do boosters on the house. There's so many things we want to plan for in this phase.
The biggest part of it is talking to home specialists and consultants like Izzy and myself, and we can help you plan out what you need and how you need it for the way that you live your life. If you have an extra wide home, you may need those Wi-Fi boosters, but you still may want to have your appliances hardwired in so you have that immediate access to everything through there. And the biggest thing is when you're talking about low voltage wiring, we can talk you through how to do some of that. High voltage wiring, you get shocked, and we have proof of that.
We also want to plan for things like security systems, sound systems. I know how much you and I both love radio and music. So having the right speakers in the house, wired, ready to go, whether that's surround sound or just speakers everywhere in the house that you like to enjoy music. And that security, again, pre-wiring is excellent, and maybe even getting it installed so it's ready to go as soon as you move in.
The other key about pre-wiring, generators. Making sure that your house is set up on a generator system so that if for some reason we are losing power, they can get you right back up either as a portion of your house or a whole house generator.
Yeah. And your hair's doing a lot better since that static electricity's gone from those shocks. I think you're looking much better.
It only took 4 years to get rid of it all.
One area in a home that's really abused when it comes to building is lighting and electrical. But here at Granite Ridge Builders, that's one of our big differences. We place a lot of emphasis and focus on doing it right the first time. So there's a lot of important areas that people don't think about lighting. For example, your tub shower area.
Absolutely. It's a huge trend to make sure things are lit well, like stairways, tubs and shower areas. We want to make sure we even have dimmers on a lot of our lights. It's a really big focal point when it comes to designs and and we're on top of the latest trends to make sure the homes are up to par.
And when you meet with our decorators, they talk a lot about your lifestyle too. So for example, if you have a house full of kids like we do, they don't turn off lights. So you may want to put motion sensors on pantries and closets. There's a lot of neat things that you can do to make your home designed right for you.
Now we have all those wonderful tips and more, but I want to get into the fun stuff and the pretty, because I want to see all of the wonderful light fixtures that are going into our homes now, because they're not just light fixtures, they are art pieces.
They are, and our homes are getting more minimalistic, modern, a little more simple. So these are great focal points. When you walk into a foyer, anymore, it's not really a lot of furniture and a lot of things on the walls. It's the simple light fixture that is the showcase.
Absolutely, and we're going to make sure that that goes with the design of your home. I mean, these art fixture light pieces are going to be anything. You could have vintage ones. You could have chandeliers that have some really neat crystals on them. You can even have nature-inspired lights. That's a really popular trend right now, is having that wood textures with some metals in it. I mean, really, there's so many really awesome options when it comes to these art fixtures. I can't even call them light fixtures. I have to call them those art fixtures.
Right, and then we don't want to forget about layering your lighting.
Absolutely.
That's very important to layer your lighting. So, for example, in a great room, you may have can lights, you may have a chandelier, but you also have those table lamps that add a little bit of warmth to the room.
Now, don't forget about the glass when it comes to these fixtures too. As you can see behind me, there's so many different options, whether it's clear, frosted, seated, and again, decorative glass fixtures to really make these pop out. Now, the one thing I've talked about on this show a lot is that you can mix metals too. So you don't have to keep black throughout or just one color throughout the house. You can do these light fixtures in black, you can do them in gold, silvers, mix the finishes depending on the area, because that's really going to create a lot of interest in the home.
Elizabeth, this is a phase that not a lot of people get excited about, but I sure do. When we look at blueprints, this is a very exciting time, because what we see here is a electrical walkthrough here of all the different switches, and we're going to have, what do I hear, 200, 250 in a household?
You're correct, and this is really important. Have you ever lived in a home where you always think, I wish there was a plug here?
Yes.
Or why is this switch behind the door? This is really important when it comes to designing your new home.
Yeah.
So we have different symbols on here, and a lot of people may not recognize how to read these. We do have a little sheet here at Granite Ridge Builders. It's a cheat sheet, but Izzy, as we look here, you can tell there's a lot of electrical that goes into this home.
Yes. And most importantly to me is I'm so glad that we've got the dollar signs here to show how expensive these outlets are going to be.
Izzy, those aren't dollar signs. Those are switches.
Okay.
So you can see where your switches are, and some of these go to pathway lighting, fans, recessed cans. So this is a great tool when you're building your home. Now behind us, we have a few examples. So we have our typical switches, but this is another important factor to think about when you're building.
Yeah, our doorbells are something, again, that are becoming more and more important, because sometimes we have different entrances to the house that we can use for friends and guests. And so you might have more than one doorbell. Does it have more than one type of ring? Of course, we have the Ring video doorbell. And I have to say Ring video doorbell, because when I say it's a Ring doorbell, everyone goes, don't all doorbells ring? But it's a Ring video doorbell, and these are very popular.
We love those. We do a lot of these. So when it comes to designing your home, don't miss out on this important item of detail so that you cover all of your electrical needs.
Yeah, and don't forget lighting for the stairs.
Kayla, we talked about the typical customer maybe spending $1,000, $1,200 a year towards electric costs. Let's talk about in the home itself and where that can be split out.
You know, the biggest one would definitely be your heating and air conditioning. There is a lot that goes into that, a lot of energy that is used. It's 46% of your electricity bills.
One thing we do at Granite Ridge is we set a 2-stage variable speed furnace to try to help. And then also the filter itself. We put it in a very convenient place where people can easily get in there and get that filter changed, which is very important.
We're almost as efficient as you can be, but there are other ways you can save in this area. You can change your furnace filter on a regular basis. Another one people might not think about is using your blinds to help. If you close your blinds more in the summer, that'll keep the sun and the heat out. If you open them in the winter, that sun can heat up your home a little bit.
Another big source is the water heater that uses power. And at Granite Ridge, again, we're trying to address this by going to on-demand water heaters.
Absolutely. That's a big, big key feature with Granite Ridge. Now, what about appliances, though? Look in the kitchen we're standing in. How much usage would
I call them tools.
I would call them appliances.
I call them tools. You've never seen my blender.
Okay, well maybe
anyway.
that's probably true too. But refrigerators take up so much energy, but it's a necessary part. And some people have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 refrigerators in their house.
Guilty as charged. And up to 13-14% of your energy costs go towards appliances. So you got to look at those.
Absolutely. Now, what about lighting? Again, we have to have lighting in our homes, and that's a really big source. 9% is what is used in energy on your light fixtures. But we're really doing a great job nowadays trying to combat that with LED bulbs.
Right, that's a biggie. And by the way, those motion detectors, every time I open up the door in the closet, the light comes on. So I don't know whether it's off or on anyway.
Yeah, well, that's another way to save, though. That's a really good tip, to make sure you have some motion detectors or some sensors so that you don't have to think about it anymore, Lonnie.
The last area in the house where you're spending money is on the audio video equipment. And up to 4%, but I think that area is growing.
I can imagine with how much usage we have for televisions, all of our equipment for charging. There are so many electronics that are used in the house between myself, my kids. It really is a big, 4%, like you said, that could definitely be growing with how much electronics are being used. But there are ways to save. Unplug those once they're charged. You don't need them in all the times. Having sleep modes and things like that. So there's plenty of areas that we do use the energy and electricity, but there are lots of ways to save.
Yeah, when it comes to your TV, if you're not watching it, turn it off.
Okay guys, we got to close. I thought this was a great show. Here's one thing that I learned is we are all going back to vintage light bulbs. I thought that was a real interesting fact. What did you guys think?
Now, one of the things I learned was, you talk about vintage light bulbs. What about the most expensive light bulbs in the world? For about $400, you can get a hand-blown crystal light bulb, and it's got that crystal pattern. Think of like an old whiskey decanter. That's what you get. And then if you don't like that, they have handcrafted light bulbs that are made to look exactly like molten lava.
Oh my.
That's
limited
about $200.
lifetime warranty,
right?
But have you guys heard of the Pink Lotus Tiffany lamp? It's not really my color, but it's worth $2.8 million.
Wow.
Watch for it on eBay.
And the Internet of Things is something that has been coming around, and it's so exciting to watch how Wi-Fi is bringing so many of our things together so that not only can they save energy, but also we can save time with it.
Well, I learned if you live in a house and there's people in your house who don't like to turn lights off, you walk to the pantry and the light's on, one way to save on your electricity bill is to put those on motion sensors.
Yes.
So you open the closet, it goes on, you close it, and it eventually go off, and it's not on for a week.
I learned today that Tesla is actually named after a man named Nikola Tesla. It's not just a name that Elon Musk came up with, so there's that.
I learned that on this Porsche behind us here, you can plug it into either side of the vehicle. So it doesn't matter which way you pull into the garage. And we do also want to thank one more time SweetCars, SweetCars.com. They are such a wonderful teammate of ours, and they bring us the best cars. And by the way, can I have the keys now?
Nope.
Shotgun.
Okay. Time's getting away from us. Kayla, would you close?
Thank you all so much for joining us today. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do so well, please pick up the phone and give us a call. Visit our website, or even better yet, come on in. We'd love to talk to you about your new home.
Okay, before we close, Kayla, we got to say a big prayer for her. By the time you see this next show, we probably are going to have a new small little studette
Hopefully.
in our midst, okay? So, all right, guys, this was a great show. What do you want to do?
All right, I'm going to Dairy Queen. Who's going with me?
Gertie.
Shotgun.
Gertie.